Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and transformational life coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Hi guys, welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I am really excited to dig into this topic today. It is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I don't know why I haven't launched an episode about this yet. I think I was just trying to wait for the right time, and very serendipitously, it came up to launch this episode in December, as it turns out, around the holiday season, which I'm actually so happy that it did, because I think this is really good timing, especially with, again, the holidays, a lot of very happy-go-lucky, joyful messaging that we're seeing on social media and all of the things. And so I think it's really important to talk about this, because when you traverse the social media landscape as you are grieving, you have to be judicious on what you're taking in. Us grievers, we have to be a little more strategic with our scrolling sometimes. And I just wanted to have an open conversation about that today and really just kind of get into how social media affects our mental health, especially while we're grieving. And the thing is, I think social media can affect us more than we even realize sometimes, which is why I want to talk about this. It's why I wanted to dedicate an episode to this and have it serve sort of a little bit as a cautionary tale, or if not that, just something to be mindful of as you scroll on social media, probably on a daily basis, like most of us do. And the thing about social media is it can be such a double-edged sword as we're grieving. On one hand, it provides this amazing community, or it can at least. It might even provide us some comfort. It might inspire us. But on the other hand, it can also trigger some really negative emotions or intensify our feelings of isolation. So in this episode, and there's so many different directions I could go with this, I really just wanted this to sort of be an intro to this topic, so to speak, if you will. And I really just wanted to kick this off by exploring just those ups and downs of social media, the benefits, the pitfalls, if you will, and just share a couple very practical tips, some things to keep in mind to make sure that it is a tool for healing for you, rather than something that is, whether you are conscious of it or not, causing you more harm, So let's quickly talk about the positives of social media, because there are some positives here, especially for those of us who are grieving. So let's start there. So when social media is used intentionally, I love social media because it can be a really powerful tool for connection, especially during grief, and especially during a time where we can feel, very isolated, very alone. It gives us a sense of community, if you will, a sense of validation. As you know, as I've just alluded to a couple times now, grief can be very isolating. But, platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, whatever is popular right now when you're listening to this, having those communities, or even if it's not a full-blown community, it's just that you post something and maybe it resonates with someone else, like that instant connection, or rather instant connection that we can have, can totally turn our day around sometimes. I have had some comments from strangers just showing me a little love or a little support that I will get from maybe friends or family for weeks. Or that I just simply don't get from some people. And whether or not that's, malicious or not, it's not usually. It's just that sometimes people in our life can be very unaware. And let's say we post something and we're just sort of wearing our heart on our sleeve or whatever it is, and you just make a connection with someone. That's the whole point of social media, right? So it can be a really beautiful gift in that way. And it's, again, building that community. It's sharing our experiences. It's finding others who have perhaps been through something similar. And, it can be very validating and very comforting. Another thing too, and I certainly do this. In fact, as of the time of this recording, my mom's death anniversary, her angel day, whatever you want to call it, was very recently. And even outside of that, I post things to memorialize my loved ones and my dog and, things that I'm missing. And I have built my social media and my community around memorializing our loved ones, the things that we're feeling, talking openly about that. And the beautiful thing about social media is it allows us to celebrate and honor those that we've lost. And it can really help keep their memory alive, which is beautiful. That's an amazing thing where, perhaps decades ago, maybe not that long ago for a lot of people, when social media wasn't that big of a thing or didn't even exist, you maybe just had to keep that in, or you were really limited to just talking to the people around you, and you kind of couldn't shout how much you loved your loved one from the rooftops like you kind of can with social media. So that's a beautiful thing about social media. And perhaps even creating like a dedicated group to preserve their legacy, or, being able to really easily invite others to join in that remembrance. Like, that's such a gift. And, I don't think it's one that we maybe acknowledge enough, or we can sometimes take advantage. Like, we might not realize how healing that can be. And that's awesome. And a third point here is I think social media does, this can also be a negative, which I'll talk about in a moment, but it does give us access to resources and to inspiration. Everything I do at Losses Become Gains in the Life with Grief podcast, perfect example. I am here to provide support. I want to provide a breath of grief-related resource from my account. And then, there's so many other amazing grief and life coaches, or, whoever it is that you resonate with, or therapists, right? Counselors, etc. And what I love about this is we have all of this at our fingertips and all of this at our disposal. And you could follow multiple accounts or connect with different coaches that each maybe give you a little thing. Like, maybe there's some things that you perhaps resonate with me as a coach or as a person, and you like certain things that I do, but maybe there's some things that I don't give you that someone else does. And that's beautiful. That's okay. I can pretty much guarantee you anybody in the grief and loss education space is like, whatever you need, however many resources you need to help you along in your healing experience and help you cope, like, absolutely, let's share the love. So that's amazing. And there's so many resources that are free or certainly close to free, and it can just really help us through our day. I mean, for me personally, there have been posts both before and after I started Losses Become Gains that have really turned my day around, or have really changed my perspective on my grief or my life in that day. And so what's great about a lot of these platforms is it can really inspire us. It can remind us that we are not alone as we feel. It's tricky though, because we want a community, and it's all virtual though, right? We still want to have some human interaction in person. So I want to preface it by saying, like, I don't feel social media makes up for having that human interaction, right? I do not feel that we should be curled up on our couch all day and communicating with people online and having just that be our social interactions. Like, we need to feel that human to human, touch, interaction, whatever you want to call it. So I do want to mention that, and just the importance of that. But I do think a really beautiful part about social media is, on the note of it kind of inspiring us, whether it is someone that you see, I don't want to say living the life that you want, but let's say here's an example, right? Living with the same or a similar loss to you. Maybe they're a little bit further along. Maybe they're sharing really vulnerably, like, what they're struggling with, but at the same time, they're sharing little wins. They're sharing what they're doing well with. I certainly try and do that and just create a really honest experience in anything that I post. I know a lot of other people are like this too. People in and out of the grief space, right? Like, influencers, that's a tough word. I struggle with influencers sometimes, but I think a lot of them, maybe don't have the best of intentions, but I know there's plenty that do. And those that share really openly, like I said, vulnerably, and we can see ourselves in them, and maybe they do kind of help inspire us to keep going, to look for the light on those really dark days. That's magical. That can be actually really healing. And for me, I'll just want to say on a personal note too, I love traveling and adventure and exploration and food and drink. I mean, my husband and I literally just launched another new podcast called Taste Toast Travel, where we talk all about that. And so for me, if you were to look at like my explore page or For You page or whatever, it is a beautiful mixture of like grief, but also excitement and adventure and expansion and discovery. And those feed two different sides of me and my soul and what I need as a human here. And it makes me happy. It makes me feel supported. It inspires me to grow. And it's just great. I mean, that's the thing about our feeds, right? You can curate them sort of however you want. Of course, the algorithm, certainly has something to do with that, I'm sure. But we have more power than we think when it comes to social media, I believe, at least. So that all being said, there's a lot of really great, amazing benefits to social media. But let's be real. It is not all rainbows and butterflies and sunshine, right? Social media can, let's just be frank, it can sometimes really worsen the pain and the anguish of our grief. And I feel like there's sort of three main challenges here. First and foremost, I would be remiss if I did not address this first. The comparison culture. It is so bad. It can be so bad, you guys. We have to remember, and I am sure I am not telling you anything you don't already know here, but I just gotta get this out. Social media, for the most part, I would say, is a highlight reel. It is not accurate to 99.99999% of someone's day. And even then, even if they are being like so real and so raw and stuff in the moment, we have to be careful. We don't know how much of that is curated. We don't know how much, I almost hate even putting this out there, but I know it happens. We don't know how much of a performance someone has put on to get a reaction, to get a like, to get a comment, to get that engagement, to get those followers. I mean, it's an unfortunate part of this landscape that we have to be discerning about in and out of grief. But social media, for the most part, is a highlight reel, right? Or we carefully post, most of us carefully post things. And when I say carefully, it doesn't mean it's, again, done maliciously or that it's strategic in a negative way. For me, for example, I think about what I'm going to post about, but I do it in a way that's really, I just kind of allow it to flow. I don't overly plan. If anything, I make sort of a note like, oh, I want to post about that sometime this week. Like, oh, maybe I already had something planned for the day. Maybe I don't have time to like really put the post together, but I'll like make a mental note or a literal note to create something about that or to write about that or, whatever it is that comes to me. So sure, there could be some planning in social media. That's fine. I think, I work in digital marketing too, outside of all of the griefy things that I do, and I have for many years. So I know how it goes. I know how the game is played, so to speak. But so there's a lot of honesty out there. There's some dishonesty out there, but it's not all dishonesty. I think my point here is really, we just have to be careful, right? Things can look so perfect and so well curated and so dreamy or so wanderlusty or whatever, but we just never really know. And a beautiful example of this actually is a guest that is going to be coming on in 2025 that I am so excited to share with you guys. I won't divulge the name or anything yet, but I just did the recording with her, and she actually has her own television show on PBS, and she's coming out with a new one. So you would imagine that this individual who has a literal TV show, and she looks so happy and so joyful and so amazing in this show, which she is. She even said to me, kind of spoiler alert in this episode, she absolutely said, Tara, I'm really happy. In those moments where you see me on TV and I look like I'm living my best life, that's not inauthentic. But that does not mean that I'm not struggling with some grief outside of that. Those two things can coexist. It's that classic, grief and joy can coexist. And I was so touched and happy that she was so honest about that. And that's just a beautiful example. Again, she's like beyond social media, right? You think you see some television personality and they must just have this magical life and it's all together. And she does, there's absolutely aspects to it, but there's so much behind the scenes that we don't know. We have no idea what someone could be dealing with. And especially during the holidays, right? Where maybe we see people traveling, or they're with their family, or they're in these dreamy places, or they got these beautiful gifts for Christmas, or whatever it is. Or even around just any other like milestone or anniversary, whatever. It can really amplify our feelings of loss. And you might catch yourself thinking, like, why is everyone else just walking around living life so happy while I am hurting so deeply? And it can be so easy to get caught up in that. And we ultimately are coming from a place of lack versus abundance. And so I'm kind of putting my life coaching hat on here for a second, so just bear with me, because when you're grieving, you might be like, Tara, don't even come at me with this like abundance mindset thing. Please get out of here. Like, I am coming from a place of lack. I'm hurting. I am in pain. I am not doing well right now. That's fine. Okay, you don't have to be there. But that is a really slippery slope that we need to be careful of with social media, because it does really enable that slipping into a dark place, or that place again of lack, of ruminating over what we no longer have or what we wish we had. And it can bring up a lot of feelings of longing and, all these really powerful but kind of negative emotions. And we don't want to make that worse on ourselves, right? So the other thing, in addition to this comparison culture and the highlight reels and all of the thing, is just emotional triggers that can come up. You might encounter just some unexpected reminders of your loved one. Maybe, I'm sure anybody here, especially who has an iPhone, that has like the, on this day, or these like memories that just randomly sometimes come up. Oh my gosh, sometimes my phone will just put one together randomly of like my dog. And it was like, princess over the years or whatever. And I'm like, it's so sweet. And I still watch it unless I'm just feeling really griefy and I just can't do it. But, those things can come up, memories on, Facebook or whatever. Like, we can be caught really off guard. But also, depending on things that other people might post, whether it's a throwback, whether it's just something going on in life, right? There's just so much popping up constantly on social media that it's just a breeding ground for triggers, really, in a way. And especially in the days that you're already struggling, or if it's the holiday season or whatever it is, and things are just especially raw, that can throw us for a loop. That can really push us back on our healing journey here a little bit. So yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that as just something to watch out for. I never want to like discourage you from going on social media if that's what you want to do, and that's, you might need that day, but just being wary, and maybe you do curate your feed a little more thoughtfully, temporarily at least, to, mitigate some of those things. But, we can't always control someone talking about how much they love their mom when we're missing ours, or whatever the loss is. So yeah, it can hurt. It can hurt big time. Lastly, here is sort of this idea of overwhelm, and we can feel really disconnected too. So I was talking earlier, it can make us feel really connected. We have this great community. We have all the things. That's great. But in saying that, it can also make us feel more disconnected or more drained. And especially when we are dealing with a wide range of emotions and we are trying to get to some more even playing ground here, so to speak, it can really wreak havoc on that. Grieving, it is hard work. Okay, right? And being online too much, it can it can do a few things. It can really numb us instead of helping us process what we're feeling, and it can also take away some of the awareness of what we're feeling because we are filling our minds and our feet and our soul and our body with content and other people's lives and experiences and emotions and thoughts. And I definitely personally feel this both on like my personal Instagrams, but also, my grief accounts and everything I do here. There are times where I I generally do not scroll for very long. I find myself frankly kind of getting overwhelmed. Like I only have kind of so much patience for it, honestly. Like think of it almost like a cup that you're sort of filling up and it's just like your social media cup for the day. And then I kind of just hit it and I'm like, woof, nope, I'm done. Okay. And especially when I am scrolling on, my losses become gains Instagram or, TikTok or something like that. And it is a little heavier. It's pretty death focused and things like that. A lot of it really resonates with me and I love to see what other people are talking about, but some of it hits home. Some of it I'm just like, ooh, okay. I have like less of a emotional bandwidth to take that in than I might with some other less, heavy content, just some things that are just lighter, right? So, but even then, even on like my own personal accounts and things, I am just really mindful. I try and just be cognizant of what I'm looking at, who I'm following, how long I've been on for. But especially now, I want to make sure that I'm just not scrolling all night so I can spend time with my husband and my daughter and take time to eat or unwind and watch a show or something instead. And so, it's all in moderation, as I like to say. That's kind of my life motto, all in moderation, especially with like, sweets or snacks and things like that too. That's how I get myself to stop. And social media is no different, right? So that's really where we can go astray with social media. Those are some of the pitfalls. So really quick to start wrapping this up, let's just talk about some just higher level tips for navigating social media, particularly for those who are grieving. Because like I said in the beginning, we do have to be a little more thoughtful and discerning with what we're intaking. But the thing is that I want to say really quick before we get into this, as I alluded to earlier, you really can take control of your social media experience. You can make it work for you, not against you. So really quick, let's talk about some of the ways we can do this. Number one is setting boundaries. So a few things here, and I kind of just talked about this. Decide when and how often you want to check social media. For example, especially for those who are grieving, let's say maybe the mornings are difficult for you. Maybe because, especially if it's a newer loss, maybe you're getting up and you are just hit with this wall of reminders that your loved one is no longer here. And it's just, I find that that's really difficult for those of us who are grieving, right? Like you wake up, assuming you got any sleep that night, and you are just hit in the face with your loss, with the anguish of what you're feeling. So maybe scrolling immediately is not going to be the most beneficial for you. Maybe it's too much information and content to take in too quickly once you first wake up. You've got to get in touch with yourself and your emotions and how you're feeling. So truthfully, I would recommend journaling. I created my Losses Become Gains daily journal for this exact reason, because it is such a more beneficial, healthier way to start your day with your own thoughts and your own feelings instead of ingesting other people's, right? So maybe for you, at least waiting like an hour, or maybe you just save your scrolling for midday, or maybe that's something you do later on, right? Or check it for a minute and then you're like, okay, kind of got my dose, because I do feel like we're all kind of addicted to it to a certain degree, truthfully. So maybe take in a little bit, but then really be aware of when you need to move on and do some other things. But also consider taking some breaks from apps, whatever those apps are for you, that might bring up those overwhelming or negative feelings. So I know people, and there's actually many professionals and fellow podcasters and, people I follow that I see talk about this all the time. Or let's say they have a family or they have kids or whatever. So they say, put their phone on like do not disturb or airplane mode or whatever. Like they do not touch it. Hopefully they're being truthful about this. But I do know some people in person that actually do this. And they don't touch it the rest of the night until they have their sort of designated times throughout the day to do that. That is an amazing way to set boundaries. So that is something I really recommend. Even temporarily, like especially if you feel like social media could be impacting you more negatively, or maybe you're listening to this and you're like, okay, maybe there is actually something I'm kind of not aware here, not paying attention to, that I need to pay attention to with my social media intake. Maybe this is a really good way to set like a reasonable boundary to start and see how that goes for you and see if that, improves your mood, improves the fluctuation of your emotions. And not that there's anything wrong with that, right? We're grieving. We're going to feel an influx of emotions. But anyway, set those boundaries, super, super healthy and important, and something that we really owe it to ourselves to do. Number 2 is curating your feed. So I've talked about this a bit already. I won't beat a dead horse here, but again, follow accounts that uplift you, period. Follow accounts that uplift you, provide genuine support, either for your grief, or even if it's not like a grief-focused account, follow people that add value, somehow make you feel better one way or another. Maybe it's inspiring you to go on the trip that you really want to go on that you couldn't imagine going on without your mom and dad here, maybe, or your sister or your brother, whatever it is. And maybe it's kind of warming you up to that again, or it's just making you happy in some way. Maybe it's accounts on cooking or baking or cars. I don't know. I mean, there's no holds barred here, but something that, social media, there's a little escapism there, and that's okay. That's perfectly healthy. I think that's an okay thing to use it for in moderation, as I say. So just gut check in with yourself. If you are scrolling and you see a piece of content, a video, an image, whatever it is, how does that make you feel? Does it help you? Does it add value to your life? Does it educate you? Does it, just check in. Just ask yourself that. And if not, mute that account, maybe unfollow that account. Anything that could trigger comparison, guilt, envy, negative emotions, get rid of it. Life is too short for that. You don't need that in your life. You have been through enough. You are going through enough. So only happy, uplifting things from here on out. Okay? Number 3 is to engage intentionally. If you post about your grief, for example, know that it's okay to control the narrative. You are in control of that. You don't owe anyone an explanation, an update. The thing about social media, and I know this well, being in the grief space as I am and things I've posted, and any of us really posting anything, I guess unless you have like your DMs blocked or shut off or whatever, or your, comments disabled, you are opening yourself up to the public, not public scrutiny, I guess, but just, comments, questions, whatever. And there could be very unhelpful ones. There could be very dismissive comments or messages, but that is where those boundaries come in, right? And engaging intentionally too. So again, do you engage back? Do you maybe block certain words or keywords, right? We can do that now, at least on Instagram that I'm aware of. And just to help you have a more wholesome experience where you feel like you can share what's on your heart and mind freely. But, I think something we also really have to remember about social media is that you can't please everybody. I have learned that the hard way. I still learn that all the time. Social media, our accounts, whatever, it's for us. I mean, I say it's for us, but ultimately, why would we be posting unless we wanted other people to see it, right? Or to, open that up to other people. Do we open ourselves up to judgment or negativity or whatever on purpose? Of course, we hope not. Could that come in? Sure. So, but even so, I often see, like, let's say on other influencers' content or whatever, and they could be talking about such a helpful or a beautiful or like a supportive topic that I could not find fault in, or I can't think of an example right now, but like I would really support them and get behind. And without a doubt, there is always some negative comment, someone having some judgment or just something horrible or negative to say. It is one of the most exhausting things about social media, in my eyes at least. And honestly, if I start seeing that kind of stuff, that really triggers something into me to be like, wow, I need to get off. I cannot deal with humanity today. There are just some truly negative, awful people out there. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and check out today. So be discerning when it comes to that too, on your own content and then other people's too. Let's spread some love, right? It's that I used to hear this all the time with my mom, and she did not make this up. This is a very known expression, but like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? But I've seen it, and I've seen it even from fellow coaches. I mean, it's crazy. It can come from the most unexpected places. So yeah, filtering, very, very important. So number 4 on my little list here, just to start finishing this up, using social media for healing practices, if you will. Now, healing, of course, being a very continuous journey, but here's a couple of examples. Maybe try journaling with some prompts that were inspired by posts that you read or maybe that you saw. Or maybe you save a post with like an affirmation or multiple affirmations that really resonate with you. And, again, that's really where the curation of our content comes into play in a really cool and positive way. And I will also point out that in my own sort of grieving experience thus far, there still are absolutely times where I would maybe come across an account where, let's say I wasn't totally emotionally there or ready to hear sort of all of it, but I really just felt a connection to the person or what they were posting about, or their content really inspired me. And so I kind of stuck around and I sort of just kind of kept taking it in. And eventually I really felt myself shifting. And, this is the whole thing of influencers. You really do kind of get influenced, whether you realize it or not. But it wasn't like influenced to like buy things necessarily. It was like it influenced my mindset, but I made sure that I was really cognizant of how it was shifting my mindset. And if it was for good and if it was a positive thing, or if there was ever any sort of negativity coming in or making me feel any, like I said, type of like longing or envy or jealousy or whatever, if I started feeling that, I'd mute it, I'd get rid of them, or I'd maybe, unfollow and refollow again later, whatever that looks like. And that's the beauty of social media. We have the freedom to do that. So again, just finding those things that resonate with you. But because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably grieving in some capacity, just also considering maybe trying to find some accounts that post things that really hit home for you in terms of helping you along in your journey of healing your heart and your soul from whatever loss you have been through or are currently coping with. But also, as far as the healing goes, last thing I'll say here is, we've touched on this a little bit earlier, but sharing those memories of your loved one, if it feels right, but coming at it from a lens that it is for you. It's not for other people. Because I feel like when we post things that we are excited to share and mean something to us, it almost doesn't matter if we get any negative comments or whatever we get. And I would hope that if you are sharing something beautiful or a lovely memory or whatever it is of a loved one, that no one's going to come at you and like say anything negative or whatever, right? But you never know. Social media is like a crazy, wild place. But using that as a means to talk about it, sometimes it's really cathartic, and you just never know who could come out of the woodwork to help support you, or be like, you know what, hey, I'm there too, or thank you so much for your vulnerability. Like, you don't even know the positive impact that you could be having on someone's life by sharing the things that you're sharing. So that's a great gift to be able to give to someone and give to yourself in the process. So last but not least here, number 5, I've said this before, I will say it again, know when to step away. Because sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is log off. Turn off your phone, turn off your computer, quite literally log out of those accounts, whatever it is that you're finding yourself scrolling on and kind of addicted to, right? Take some time out. It's okay. Everybody needs that. Everyone needs a reset, whether you are grieving or not. It's so important. Spend time with yourself. Get to know yourself again. Get to hear your own thoughts, as opposed to the thoughts and the implications and all of these other things that are thrown at us from other people, which is the nature of social media. So, like I said, spend time with yourself, spend time in nature with your loved ones that are here, spend time with them in person, go on that coffee date, have that girls or guys night, whatever this looks like for you. Because I feel like a really good place to sort of leave this is healing often happens in those quiet moments offline. It just does. The beautiful thing about social media and being online and things is we might have aha moments. We might come across a piece of content or someone's beautiful written words or spoken words. I follow some beautiful poets on Instagram, for example, that just speak this beautiful poetry, and it's so touching. There's many of which I've shared on Losses Become Gains before. Those are things that I hope inspire people, because they certainly inspire me. But those really healing moments where we, like I said, can hear our own thoughts and our own emotions and our own feelings about things. We might have those aha moments online, but those really impactful, deep, healing moments happen when we are not on our phones. And also, it's not that healthy to be attached to your electronic device and the Wi-Fi signals and all the things, probably that much. I would imagine. I'm not a scientist, but listen, it can't be that good for us, right? So take the break, take the physical break, take the mental break. Okay. So couple closing thoughts and final tips here. As we navigate our grief, as I hope has been made clear today, social media can be, well, two things: a bridge for healing or an absolute roadblock. And it's not one extreme or the other. Sometimes it's this crazy mixture of both, right? It's not one extreme or the other. It is all about how we use it. And I want you to remember today, if you take away nothing from this episode other than this, remember that you are in control of your online experience. Period. It is okay to prioritize your mental health above everything else. Grief is already exhausting. Please do not let the pressures of the digital world, the digital space, make it harder on you. And whether you choose to engage online or you take a step back entirely, what really matters is honoring your journey here in whatever way feels authentic to you. If that is not posting at all, and that is taking like a several month break from social media, amazing. More power to you. Whether that is talking about it super openly and posting pretty frequently about it, like I do, because that's really cathartic for you, amazing. More power to you. It's all about making it work for you. All right, you guys, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might find it helpful. I think this is again, just an important reminder for those of us who are grieving. Sometimes we don't know or realize how much grief really is affecting us. So I think it's just, again, a really important thing to share. It's why I was so passionate about doing this episode. And just to offer Also, if you are looking for more tools or support for navigating grief, speaking of social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Losses Become Gains and at Life with Grief Podcast. I also am on TikTok for the podcast. Or you can visit my website or the show notes. There's plenty of links and lots of things to help you along. All right. Thank you so much for being here and for letting me be a part of your healing journey. I love to support you however I can, and I'm sending you lots of love, and I will see you in the next episode. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, membership, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.